You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Denkman. Here's a number for you, 108,170. That's the number of times immigration enforcement has attempted to look up a Washington license plate number and been denied since November of last year. That number comes from the state, and it's one that Governor Bob Ferguson has been touting, citing the value of guarding residents' data from the federal government. While the number seems high, does it mean a difference in enforcement actions? Gustavo Sagrero has been looking into this statistic. He's KUOW's race, identity, and immigration reporter, and he joins me now. Hey, Gustavo.
Hey there.
Thanks for being here. So we're going to talk today about a practice that immigration enforcement uses, and that is searching databases for information like license plate numbers. So why do ICE and CBP agents make these types of searches?
Well, ICE officials said they use information-based leads to identify and arrest people in what they call targeted enforcement. They'll use skin color and types of places or jobs people work or frequent. It's all part of their process to build what they call reasonable suspicion to stop someone for a potential arrest. In many cases, they'll go to a place they think they can find people who fit that description, look up the license plates, and make a stop. This is Angelina Godoy, Director of Research at the UW Center for Human Rights, who's been tracking these kinds of arrests.
They literally see the car, run the plates, and pull a person over often within an hour, within just minutes after getting that confirmation. And they call those targeted enforcement operations. That's exactly the language they use. But the word target and targeted really lose their meaning in the sense where they've testified in court that they go to places that they believe to be target-rich environments and run plates at random.
The whole process can take within an hour and as quickly as 10 minutes, she says. Sometimes warrants have been signed after an arrest was made.
And can you kind of walk us through how it actually works in practice?
Sure. What Godoy says is immigration enforcement will go somewhere they think they know people won't have documentation, and then they'll just start running all of the license plates in that location. For example, they'll go somewhere like a flea market, which happened this Sunday. Mel Armendariz runs La Pulguita in Auburn. It's a pop-up flea market and farmers market that's taken place every Sunday for the past 4 years. She, like many others, are part of a community of people with a gradient of immigration statuses. A whole family could have an undocumented person, natural-born citizens, and green card holders going to the flea market or working a stall.
On Sunday, we had an ICE raid. They got to the place of my business early morning, about 6:30 to 7 o'clock.
She told me around 3 to 8 unmarked cars were there, where ICE agents came out and took people into custody. Some were pulled from their cars. In the days and the weeks leading up to this, she says she would see ICE driving around and suspected they were scanning plates, but she didn't think much of it until Sunday. At first, she said 3 people were arrested, but since that Sunday morning, she says that's changed.
I just got a call saying that there is more vendors missing, and that there are a lot of my customers as well in the ICE detention. So I don't know. I'm trying to figure out who's missing.
Armendariz suspects the plates were run. We don't know yet if ICE used DOL data for this specific series of arrests, but we're working with researchers to cross-reference this, and we'll likely get an update later today.
So what do the feds actually get out of this Department of Licensing data? I mean, how does running the plates help them make an arrest?
They get driver's license and vehicle registration information when they do this. They can cross-reference names and addresses with their records, like old deportation orders, and make a stop if they get a match. But it doesn't always happen this way. We've reported on stops where ICE agents say the person they stopped looks like someone they could report, but then let them go after finding out they're citizens. In one case, a source told us they weren't even given a justification for the stop. This person was also a citizen. In these kinds of stops, if people can't provide proof of citizenship, they're taken into custody.
So, Gustavo, the governor has been talking about the value of Washington's laws to shield people's information from these immigration searches by federal agents. But I guess I want to know, do these searches necessarily mean that somebody is taken into custody?
What agents are searching is driver and vehicle records housed and managed by the Washington State Patrol and the Department of Licensing. Because state law limits cooperation between local law enforcement and federal immigration enforcement, there's blocks that have been put in place aiming to prevent the feds from looking up records for the purpose of immigration enforcement. Those blocked agencies have typically been Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Customs and Border Protection, and Homeland Security investigations, all agencies historically responsible for making arrests.
So we know that Washington law blocked more than 100,000 of these searches by immigration enforcement. Does that mean that they're blocked entirely? Are federal officials able to get this data some other way?
According to Godoy, yes.
The governor's office has taken some action to prevent ICE from searching it with their ICE user IDs. However, we know that CBP still has access to it and is using it every day. And oftentimes it's arrests being carried out by ICE pursuant to a search that was conducted by CBP.
She says immigration enforcement will try through one entry point into the record system, get rejected, and then try again until they get a successful hit.
So these searches were way up over the last few months. What did the numbers show?
The number of rejected requests shot up between March to April and peaked in May and June. That's also when we saw more reports from the community of immigration enforcement in their neighborhoods. But these are just rejected requests. Researchers say that from January of this year to mid-June, they found that Border Protection has made over 1 million requests overall. But then there was a lull in July in denied requests.
Is it clear why this happened, Gustavo? The lull in July and, all the numbers that we've been looking at?
Yeah, this all coincides with the deaths of 2 men, one in Maine and another in Texas, who weren't the subject of an initial ICE arrest that agents said they were out to do. After those deaths, DHS reportedly issued a memo to temporarily stop vehicle arrests while they got further training on arrests. But then they were spurred to get back to work by the Trump administration, calling these vehicle stops one of the most important and effective tools in his mass deportation efforts.
Does the data on this most recent surge match what you've been hearing about from communities, like on the ground and people that you're in contact with?
We've been hearing from community groups like the Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network, also called WISN, that arrests were up statewide. There's also other community groups also flagging this in South King County. Attorneys are also saying that the number of cases they're managing from the Seattle suburbs were also up. That's all tracking with nationwide trends, too. But WISN has been pointing out something also trending upwards, a rise of reported violence from immigration enforcement during the arrest. Lots of videos online show this. Everyday people recording and documenting these aggressive tactics. Think smashed windows and people being dragged from their cars and being arrested on the ground. WISN also says people who have been complying have had guns pulled on them by the federal immigration enforcement. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen says immigration enforcement agents are also seeing a rise in vehicular attacks. He blames the immigrants in cars trying to evade arrest and the Democratic politicians that help them with Know Your Rights trainings and how to identify ICE.
So where is the state's so-called sanctuary law, the Keep Washington Working Act, in all of this?
I had a chance to speak with people involved when they first crafted the law in 2019. A lot of it was motivated to protect immigrants, with parts of that focused around data and when the state should or shouldn't be giving it over to the feds for immigration enforcement. Godoy says immigration enforcement being allowed to access driver and vehicle info, which is managed by the Washington State Patrol and the Department of Licensing, flies in the face of the spirit of that law, especially when a majority of civilian arrests of immigrants are people who don't have an underlying criminal justification. A policy person from Washington's chapter of the American Civil Liberties Union says the law doesn't have enough teeth to make sure it's fully enforced or an accountability system that penalizes violations. It's only through state oversight and lawsuits that it can be upheld. The governor's office says they're working on a way to address these record searches, but they want to avoid fully shutting off all access to the federal government in order to keep information flowing for public safety concerns. Think, identifying people with guns who shouldn't have them and human trafficking.
There's a human element to this data on immigration enforcement. I mean, you just did a story about a mechanic who tows and stores cars of people who were picked up by immigration enforcement. What is the impact of these surges of enforcement on communities? Just, as a final note before we go.
The biggest thing is a sense of safety. We could talk all day about the weight of a single parent home that many are saddled with, or the economic costs of a loss of business or patrons to a business, or the fear of violence that people face if you're part of a mixed immigrant community or brown. It used to be that people were often afraid to speak out or talk to press or people outside of the community, but it's been happening frequently and long enough that even researchers, which aren't often the first people that sources want to go to when someone's arrested, have been able to build a rapport with some of the impacted communities. Here's Godoy again.
At this point, we're receiving many cases where people are telling us, hey, I think my loved one was pulled over after their plates were searched. And so we're putting those through the research process.
That research process she's talking about is documenting potential constitutional rights and human rights violations. But there's also other impacts on the community that we've reported on of U.S. citizens who have documented or shared an arrest to social media or press. They've later gotten pulled over by unmarked cars or ICE agents will drive by their place of work. It's also important to point out Latinos are a big demographic that are being targeted. But underneath that, there are so many first, second, and third generation American communities with strong ties to their heritage also going through this. Here's Mel Almendaris again.
It is terrifying. This whole ordeal, the ICE is not nice at all. You know, they're not confronting you nice way. They're confronting you with guns, with a mask, unmarked cars. So it is very scary, and they're pulling out guns on you and stuff, and that's not good for the community at all. Terrifying our community like that.
She's telling people, even those who are getting documented, to stay home. She's unsure of the future of her community hub, too. She, a citizen, is also looking forward to the midterm elections for a potential change, but other citizens impacted by this have given up on voting and are taking a more direct action to address the impacts echoing through the community now, like Angel the mechanic.
Yeah, who's going out and just helping people, you know, making sure that their cars don't get towed by somebody else, right?
Yeah.
Gustavo Sagrero is KUOW's race, identity, and immigration reporter. Thank you so much, Gustavo.
Of course.
Thanks for listening to Soundside. Don't forget you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 FM Seattle at noon and 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, or anytime online at KUOW.org or on your favorite podcast app.